The dry season had barely begun when the coughing started. At first, nobody worried. Men coughed, women coughed, children coughed. Life continued. But this cough was different. It lingered. It deepened. And with every passing week, Use became weaker. The strong man who once moved through his compound with confidence now struggled to cross his own yard. Food lost its taste. His clothes became loose. His voice grew thin. Then came the blood. The first time villagers saw blood on the cloth pressed against his mouth, fear spread through the family. Because in those days, blood carried messages. And this message looked like death. Nobody knew what was killing him. Nobody knew how to stop it. And before long, Use was dead. The mourning lasted for days. But the family's nightmare was only beginning. Because not long after Use's burial, another man became sick. His brother, Egu. The same man who had cared for him. The same man who had stayed close to him. The same man who had carried food, water, and comfort to his sick brother. Soon, Egu began coughing too, then growing weak and weaker, then losing weight, then coughing blood. And before the village could understand what was happening, Egu was dead as well. 2 brothers, 2 graves, 1 family, and no explanation. Fear spread faster than the disease itself. People whispered in markets. They whispered in farms. They whispered beside evening fires. Something was haunting the family. So they believed. Something unseen, something angry. So the family did what families did when tragedy refused to explain itself in those days. They went to consult an oracle. But what the oracle revealed would send them searching many years into the past. Back to a woman. Back to a goat. Back to one terrible accusation. And back to a man whose left eye had been destroyed forever. A man who insisted he had done nothing wrong. To understand why 2 brothers died, we must go back to many years before now. Back before the funerals. Back before the oracle. Back before anyone spoke of curses. Back to a woman named Uche. Uche was Use's wife. And in a time when many women traded close to home, Uche moved further. She was a merchant. She visited other villages far for business. She bought where goods were cheap. She sold where they were needed. She crossed paths. She met strangers. She built relationships. And in trade, relationships mattered. A trade that needed trust. A trade that needed goodwill. A trade that needed people in other villages who could receive her, protect her, and do business with her again. In one of the villages Uche visited, she became friendly with a man. Not secretly, not shamefully, not as a lover, but as people who met through business. Over time, the man gave her a goat. It was a gesture of friendship, a symbol of shared value, a gift, a sign of trust. Uche accepted it and returned home. Months passed. The goat grew. The goat reproduced. And life continued as normal. Then one day, the man came to Uche's village. He had come for what he believed was a simple matter. He wanted to see the goat, and since the goat had given birth, he expected to share in what had come from it. To him, this was not a scandal. It was not a secret. It was not an insult. It was simply the continuation of a relationship built through trade routes. But by evening, the meaning of his visit has changed. By evening, the meaning of his visit has changed. Someone saw him. Someone asked why he had come. Someone remembered that Uche had visited his village. someone remembered the goat, and slowly the goat stopped being a goat. It became evidence. The friendship stopped being friendship. It became suspicion. And suspicion soon became danger. Nobody remembered exactly who spoke first and spreaded the rumor. History rarely preserved the first whisperer or the first whisper itself, but somebody suggested there was another reason for the man's visit. Somebody suggested the friendship between Uche and the visitor was not merely friendship. Somebody suggested the goat had never really been about the goat. Then the visitor denied everything. When he was confronted, Uche also denied everything. But the denial rarely stops a rumor people already want to believe. In tightly connected communities, reputations was not a small matter. A woman's reputation affected her husband. A husband's reputation affected his family. And a family's reputation affected his standing in the village. So when the accusation reached Uche and Uche's relatives were angry. They moved faster and for a reason. They did not calmly investigate. They did not gather evidence. They did not ask whether a business friendship had been misunderstood. They saw shame. They saw insult. They saw a stranger who had crossed a line. And soon the man found himself surrounded. The crowd shouted. He pleaded. He insisted he had done nothing wrong. But once the crowd had decided that a man is guilty, innocence became almost impossible to prove. The beating began. Blows came from every direction. Fists, sticks, feet. The visitor fell, but the anger did not stop. By the time the violence ended, one of his eyes has been destroyed. Permanently destroyed. His left eye would never see again. Blood covered his face. His body was broken. His dignity has been dragged through the dust. And the worst part was this. No one had proven anything. A rumor has become a sentence. And a sentence has become a violence. Then the man left the village with one eye. Gone. But he did not leave the story behind. The injured man returned to his people. Broken, humiliated, partially blind. Many expected revenge. Maybe an attack. Maybe a feud. Maybe one village rising against another. But he chose a different path. He took his grievance to Ite. To outsiders, Ite may have looked like only a shrine. But to believers, Ite was justice. Ite was where hidden wrongs would be exposed. Ite was where a person could carry pain when human beings had refused to listen. The blinded man went before the deity. He told his story. He spoke of the goat. He spoke of the accusation. He spoke of the beating. He spoke of the eye he had lost. Then he left the matter there. Years passed. The village moved on. Children grew. Harvest came and went. Those who joined the beating grew older. Many people assumed the matter had been forgotten. But the man who lost his eyes could not forget. For him, the beating did not end when the crowd dispersed. Every morning he woke with the consequences. Every journey reminded him. Every marketplace reminded him. Every glance from a stranger reminded him. One eye was gone forever. Distances became harder to judge. Ordinary tasks became one difficult one for him. Children sometimes stared at him. Visitors sometimes asked questions. What happened to your eye? And every question forced him to remember the day a rumor changed his body forever. The cruelest part was that no one had ever proven he was guilty. No witness has produced evidence. No confession has been made. No truth has been established. A rumor has been addressed with certainty. Certainty has become violence, and violence had made a wound he carried for life. The village moved on. His injury did not. Then years passed. Then years later, Use began to cough. When Use died, the family journey began, and their mourning started. But when Egu died, after caring for him, grief turned into terror. Two brothers have just died in the same way, the same weakness, the same wasting body, the same cough, the same blood. The family needed an answer, so they consulted the oracle. The oracle listened. The deaths were explained. The fear was presented. The family waited. Then the oracle gave a verdict that changed everything. The death, the oracle said, was not ordinary. They were linked to the man whose eye has been destroyed, the man who had been accused because of Uji, the man who had taken his case before Ite. According to the oracle, the past has just returned. The family was not merely grieving, they were being punished. For fear entered the compound like smoke, because under the traditions connected to Ite, death was not the only consequence. Property could also be claimed. Farms, barns, palm trees, stored food, economic resources, anything connected to the condemned household could become dangerous. And worse, people believed that anyone who touched such properties without settling the matter could also die. Suddenly, grief became economic disaster. The family had land, but they could not freely use it. They had barns, but they feared touching them. They had farms, but fear kept people away. The dead had only left graves. The dead had not only left graves, they had left hunger. But not everyone accepted the oracle's words easily. The journey home was quieter when they were returning from the oracle than anyone expected. No one celebrated the answer. No one felt relieved. If anything, the family seemed more frightened than before. For several days, discussions continued behind closed doors. At first, most people avoided speaking openly. Then one evening, the silence broke. "We should settle this immediately," one elder insisted. "The oracle has spoken. The longer we wait, the worse it may become." Several relatives nodded in agreement, but not everyone agreed. Another cousin shook his head. "How can we know this is truly the cause?" The compound fell silent. Nobody has expected anyone to question the oracle directly. His words were solid. Nobody touched it. Then the man continued. "Use was sick for a long time. Egu cared for him every day. It is possible that whatever killed one also killed the other." A few younger men exchanged nervous glances. The suggestion sounded reasonable, but it also sounded dangerous. One elder objected immediately. "If it were ordinary sickness, why would two brothers die the same way?" "Because they live close to each other," the cousin replied. "They shared the same compound." Another elder struck the ground with his walking stick. "Enough!" His voice carried across the gathering. The oracle saw what we could not see. The argument intensified. Some believed the deaths were clear evidence of supernatural punishment. Others were less certain. Then one woman asked the question nobody wanted to answer. If this is punishment, why did it wait so many years? Silence followed. Because it was a difficult question. The beating has happened long ago. Children have grown into adults since then. Why now? Why not earlier? The uncertainty only deepened the disagreement. For the first time, the family divided into two camps. One camp feared what could happen if they ignored the oracle. The other had feared making life-changing decisions based on something they could not prove. Night after night, the debates continued. But every discussion reached the same obstacle. But every discussion eventually reached the same obstacle, whether the deaths were caused by curse or not. The family still faced a terrible reality. This land remained inaccessible. These resources remained trapped, and hunger was becoming impossible to ignore. And in the end, certainty did not win the argument. Fear did. And once fear takes control, people stop thinking. They stop asking questions. Whether a decision is correct or not, they begin asking only whether it might save them. The family now faced a terrifying question. How do you survive when the land that feeds you has become untouchable? How do you eat when your barns are feared? How do you rebuild when every resource is surrounded by spiritual danger? The answer was redemption. The property had to be built. The deity had to be appeased. The family needed money, a huge amount of money. For Egu's household, there was a way forward. His wife was a big trader. She had resources. She had connections. She had the means to gather what was required. Through efforts sacrifice, and wealth from trade, she was able to redeem her husband's property. Her household could return to its farms. Her children could continue surviving. But Use's family was not as fortunate. Use's wife Uche was no longer the active trader she had once been. The wealth that might have saved them was gone. The family could not raise what was needed. Their farms remained trapped. Their barns remained trapped. Their survival remained uncertain. And somewhere in that fear, one terrible idea began to form. If they could not pay with money, what else could they offer? The answer would become more tragic than the death that came after it. Because the next person to carry the burden of this family's fear would not be Use. It would not be Egu that just died. It would not be the elders who made the decision. It would be a girl, a little young girl, Use's daughter. Her name is Ugo. But here is the twist. The twist nobody in the compound could have understood at the time. The deaths that terrified the family may not have been caused by Ite at all. Years later, another member of Use's family became sick. The symptoms look familiar. The cough, the weakness, the weight loss, the blood. The family feared the cycle had begun again. But this time, the sick person was taken to orthodox doctors. Medical examinations revealed the truth. Tuberculosis was the cause. Tuberculosis is a contagious disease, a disease that spreads through close contacts and affects the lung. Suddenly, the old mystery looked different. Use has been sick. Egu had cared for him closely. Egu had then developed the same symptom. The timeline fits. The symptom fits. The medical explanation fits. What the family had interpreted as a cause may have been a disease they did not understand. But knowledge arrived too late. By the time the medicine gave the family an explanation, fear had already made decisions. Property had already been surrendered. Lives had already changed. And one innocent girl was already about to pay a price no child could ever pay. Her name was Ugo. And to save her family, she would be given to Ite for 1 season. Not for 1 season, not for 1 year, but for 21 years. That is where the next story begins. Thank you for listening.